So the Browns get a win here against Washington at home to go 500 for the first time since Brian Hoyer, Johnny Manziel, Josh Gordon, and Mike Pettin were all working for the Cleveland Browns. Thus to say, it's been quite a while since the Browns have been over 500, I believe. Also, it's quite hilarious that Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator the last time the Browns were over 500, and Kevin Stefanski's offense obviously has a lot of ties to the Shanahan offense and Gary Kubiak's offense and all those offenses that look in a similar fashion. So big win for the Browns here from that standpoint. Also a win that the Browns needed to get here at home. So what was good from this win and what was bad from this win? Well, let's talk about it. Real quick, if you're new here, please make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. Going to be a ton of Browns content coming up. So if you want to make sure you get the best Browns coverage on the internet, click this subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you don't miss a single thing. So what did this Browns win mean? One, it was a game that the Browns were expected to win by multiple scores. That's what I thought they should do. That's what they did. Now, I'm not a huge fan of how they got there. I think it was a little bit more sloppy than we all anticipated. But here's the main takeaway. And no matter how deep into the negatives we get with this win, I want to make sure that that takeaway is front and center about this team, because this team did something that I don't think I've seen a Browns team do ever since the expansion era, and that is do what good teams do. And what I mean by that is if you look at the position Washington was in, the Browns have been in that position hundreds of times where they make a surge, they look really good for a quarter, they even take the lead, and then once it gets to the fourth quarter, once it gets time to win, the other team, the good team, just knows how to win and makes the plays they need to make in order to pull away from the Browns, and then it's another 2-score loss for the Cleveland Browns. The Washington football team was in that exact situation that the Browns have been stuck in for decades, losing in that fashion. That's what the Browns have always done in that situation, and it looked like the Browns were going to give this game away. But the Browns did what good teams do, because good teams don't always play clean games. Good teams don't always come out with their best foot forward. But what good teams must always do is in those moments where you're not playing well, but you get something, some inch to capitalize on, like a turnover, interception, fumble, something, you take advantage of it and you take the momentum back. When you need the momentum desperately, the Browns needed it. After Washington scored, the Browns were like on a 3rd and 9. They desperately needed to continue this drive and score on that drive in order to get the momentum back from Washington. And boom, you find Odell Beckham, big first down, you continue to drive, you score. That's what good teams do. You get 3 interceptions, you get 3 touchdowns from those interceptions. That's what good teams do. You score with every turnover you get against a team that you should beat. That's what good teams do. Good teams don't always play their best. That's just football. That's just human nature. But what the good teams always do is realize when it's a moment they need to capitalize to beat a lesser opponent. And that's what the Browns did today. They did something they've never done since they come back since '99, in my opinion. Do what good teams do. Make the plays that good teams make. This is what a good team does when they don't play well. I'm going to get into some of the positives and a lot of the negatives about how the Browns played today, because they did play sloppy. But keep that in mind first and foremost, that's very important that the Browns did this, right? It sounds cliche, but the Browns finally looked like a team that knew how to win. And as somebody who grew up listening to Cleveland sports talk and having to hear how this Browns team just doesn't know how to win time and time again, it was really refreshing to see the Cleveland Browns look like a team that knew how to win. Now, with that being said, let's start talking about the defense. The first thing for this defense is, one, Dwayne Haskins might deserve a game ball because he threw 3 interceptions, and they were pretty bad interceptions. Staring down the receiver, completely missing on a throw. Like, even that one to Carl Joseph should not have been an interception, even when he was staring the guy down. He just completely missed him, and Carl Joseph was there. The Malcolm Smith one was a little bit more excusable, but again, he stared him down. The same thing with the B.J. Goodson one. Bad interceptions by Dwayne Haskins. And I do think it says more about Haskins than it does this defense, given how they played most of the time they were out there. But Dwayne Haskins threw 3 interceptions, and kudos to the offense again for capitalizing on those interceptions. That was huge. That was the difference in this game, pretty much. Myles Garrett even made a play, forced a fumble. They got 3 points from that. 24 points on turnovers for the Cleveland Browns. That's what you need to do against a team that you should beat in Washington. But still, a ton of holes in this zone. The issues are still there. And again, man, I don't think it's personnel as much as it is communication, right? Like, it just looks like bad communication. There are about 3 or 4 times in every single drive that I see where you'll see a DB or a linebacker start to panic and try to figure out where everybody's supposed to be and what responsibilities everybody has. And most of the time, they snap the ball before the Browns can figure it out, and then boom, somebody is wide open. Malcolm Smith had a huge whoopsie with this one. He was supposed to cover Terry McLaurin, but he just got confused by everything that was going on with the secondary pre-snap. Like, he had no idea where he had to be. So the ball got snapped, and he just watched Terry McLaurin just run across his face straight wide open in the zone for like a 17-yard completion that got him in the red zone and led to the score that put the Washington football team up in the third quarter. So communication is horrendous. The personnel's fine. When they're in the right spots to make plays, they kind of do make a good amount of plays. It's just that they're never in the right spot. And something has to be done about that, because you can live with that when you're playing Dwayne Haskins, who has the worst QBR in NFL. But you're going to play against Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Amari Cooper next week. You better have a lot of this figured out, or else you're going to get shredded for an astronomical amount of yards against that offense, let alone they also have Zeke, who can run the ball pretty well. So the secondary, the communication, the zone, they have to come to an ultimatum at the end of this week. Either they're going to keep running the zone and fix the communication problems and figure something out on that front, or they're just going to have to commit to running more man, because it's atrocious at this point. It's almost game-breaking at this point, and it cannot continue against a team like Dallas, who can legitimately hurt you with all the weapons they have and a very good quarterback. I hope they have a solution in hand sooner than later, sometime this week. They got to figure it out. You know, once they get guys healthy, maybe that fixes things. Maybe Greedy coming back fixes a lot, but I don't really think it does, because the one piece you were hoping that could come in and fill a big hole was Kevin Johnson, and he played a healthy amount this week. Still didn't really change much. You got more turnovers, but again, that was more Dwayne Haskins playing bad than it was about the defense being really good. But there were areas where the defense did play good. You know, they did make the plays. They did get the interceptions. Again, Browns don't always make the obvious plays, and B.J. Goodson was really good. Malcolm Smith was really good for the most part. Other than that one play, he was really good out there, made some pass breakups. B.J. Goodson was pretty good in coverage today. It was actually to the point where I didn't even think about Mack Wilson at all that entire game, and I don't think a lot of people did either, because they weren't really getting killed in that way. So kudos to B.J. Goodson. As I pointed out in my video, he had a pretty bad first 2 games in coverage. As I pointed out in my video, nice recovery for him. Malcolm Smith, it's really nice to see him get more snaps, because he actually has played well in coverage situations for the Browns as a stand-up linebacker. So nice to see him get a good amount of snaps. Nice to see B.J. Goodson play much better out there. Also, the defensive line played really well. I liked how they looked today. Miles with the 2 sacks, the 1 strip sack. He was being disruptive all day. Larry Ogunjobi got that big TFL. Sheldon Richardson has been pretty good the entire season. So again, kudos to those 3 guys. But one of the things I harped on in the preseason kind of reared its ugly head again. It's the lack of depth in size on this defensive line, which did end up hurting them. Washington would just go into hurry up, which was very effective whenever Myles Garrett would leave the field. So they would be able to take advantage of that and run on this team pretty easily once they got that going. And again, Washington wasn't able to take advantage of it to the level that a better team will. And that's something that is concerning, that a better team will come around and be able to take advantage of that and do that same thing. Imagine Dak Prescott having that with Zeke Elliott in his backfield and being able to move the ball that quickly and that easily against those fronts that aren't necessarily so deep. So that's a little bit of a concern there. But the starters played well. So my final notes about the defense is that the secondary has to figure out this problem this week. If they're going to stick with zone, they need to either give the green dot to somebody else, figure out a better line of communication, or just like get a ton of practice time in, or as much as they can possibly, to figure out some of these kinks before they play Dallas, or they just need to scrap it and go to something a lot more simple that they can run semi-competently, because right now at times it doesn't even look competent, and that's a huge concern for this defense. The defensive line, the starters have looked good. I'm really happy with what I've seen out of all the starters so far, minus Olivier Vernon. But again, the lack of depth is concerning. Hopefully you'll see more out of Jordan Elliott next week and see him play a little bit better. But when Miles is off the field, when Larry Ogunjobi's not on there, there's a huge gap on this defensive line. And again, teams are starting to get wise to that and just run hurry up whenever they see 95 run off the field. And that's going to be dangerous when, you know, it's Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, and Zeke Elliott. And the linebackers had a good day today. They played as well as you could have hoped them to play in the situations they were put in. They were responsible for the 2 interceptions, and you cannot say that those 2 interceptions were not absolute game changers for the Cleveland Browns. So you have to tip your hat to the linebackers. They had a really good game today. They really stepped up, and I hope that we see the secondary step up in that similar way against a much better Dallas team. All right, so offensively, it was an up and down day. Baker was exactly what I think they needed him to be. He made the plays that were there. He didn't force anything. He stayed turnover free while also executing really well in the red zone. That's winning football. That's what you want from your quarterback in this kind of a system. A guy who has the arm talent to make some special plays, but also isn't going to fall in love with his arm talent so much that he's going to throw you into turnovers. So good football by Baker Mayfield, winning football by Baker Mayfield. And I know this isn't the transformative, you know, kind of MVP type play that a lot of people expected from somebody that you drafted #1 overall. And those gripes are kind of legitimate. I understand where those come from. You see Patrick Mahomes out here. You see Lamar Jackson out here, you know, young quarterbacks who have won the MVP. But Baker Mayfield's path is much different than those guys. And right now, best case scenario, he's on that Big Ben path where Big Ben had to be protected early on. He had to be put in the right system. He could not throw the ball a ton. You had to put Big Ben in the right spots in order for him to blossom as he did. And when Big Ben got into his 6th year after he got his contract, he did blossom into the Big Ben that we fear today, the Big Ben that can go 5 wide and just kill you in any kind of formation. He was not that killer his first 5 years in Pittsburgh. He was an interception machine. He was somebody you had to limit how often he threw the ball. He did not go over 500 passing attempts in his first 5 years. So Baker Mayfield, probably along that same path. It's a slow burn with him when it comes to his development. We'll see what he is later on because the tools are there, the arm talent's there, and it's all there for him. It just needs to be put in the right system, and this is the right system for him. Speaking of winning football, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are absolutely winning football. They're very good, and the Browns offense is shockingly very good when they use Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I know, who would have thought that that would be a catalyst to how good this offense was going to be. But I don't want to give all my praise to just those two, even though they played excellent. I feel like Odell and Jarvis had a silently very good game, and not from a production number. They didn't have any touchdowns. They didn't have any of these giant yardage numbers, but they made the big plays when the Browns needed it. I mentioned that 3rd down that Odell got. Odell was clutch in moments here for the Browns, extending drives, being open for Baker Mayfield when he escaped the pocket, finding that chemistry with them. These are things that I love to see out of Baker and Odell. It seems like they're really on the same page. Even when it's not clicking for the offense, they seem to be able to find a way to find each other to get it going. And Odell, when he got that 3rd down catch, really got it going for this offense, and that really started the ball rolling downhill and, you know, got the Browns to that point to where they could have a 14-point lead to end the game. Odell Jarvis, I think, made huge contributions. Again, it's not how much yardage they get. It's where they get that yardage that makes them valuable, and where they got it was incredibly critical for this Browns team. The offensive line was not as great as they were the last 2 weeks. Conklin looked a little rusty. He got beat a couple of times. I would just like to see him get back into the flow of things before I get too critical of him. Jedrick Wills looked more like a rookie today, had some rookie mistakes, had some early penalties, looked kind of like anxious to go against Chase Young, but he kind of shook that off later on in the game and had himself a decent game. And again, this Browns offensive line definitely had moments of brilliance, definitely had moments of dominance, but that was also once Washington lost two of their better pass rushers. And my last note for the offense is for Kevin Stefanski. I absolutely understand why he would want to be more aggressive and open up the playbook and go start this second half where you have a lead, you feel like you have momentum, and a lot of 5 wide right after you scored off of 5 wide. I understand why he would want to do that to put the game away, but I just don't think this team as of right now in their development, in their installation of this offense is ready for that. Baker's not ready for it. This team's not ready for it. They just don't look crisp. It looked like for that third quarter, the team we saw in Baltimore that fell in love with all that shotgun stuff and just fell behind and kept making mistakes and could not move the ball. But the second they decided to go back to their bread and butter, that under center, play action heavy run offense, boom, offense came back. Offense looked really good. Able to get the ball in the end zone, able to capitalize on these turnovers. So the bread and butter is good on this team. The Browns have an identity. That's what they should do, especially early on in this season. They just need to stick to the bread and butter and not worry about matchups and what they think they could take advantage of. Just stick to the bread and butter, because I think that's going to be the Browns' best bet early on. Later on in the season, they might be able to execute from these different formations and these different concepts better. But right now, it looks like the bread and butter is the thing that really, really works with this team right now. Not every win for every team is going to be a fun win. It's not going to always be blowouts against teams you should blow out. But the good teams, they find ways to win. That's what the Browns did. It's a tired cliche. I mentioned it earlier, but the Browns looked like a team that knew how to win, knew how to turn it on to beat teams that they are better than. How many times have we seen better teams than the Cleveland Browns come into Cleveland Browns Stadium and do that exact same thing to us? Today, we were not the victim. We were the perpetrator. We did it to them. That's great. And that's the most important takeaway, because that's an important step for this team to take mentally. But that does not in any way, shape, or form overshadow the issues on this team. Obviously, the secondary is a problem and needs to be fixed sooner than later, especially when you have a game against Dallas incoming. It's not the situation you want to be in. And obviously, I would love to see the Browns have more confidence and stick with their bread and butter, even if they aren't necessarily killing it in the run game early. The bread and butter works. You have to trust it. You have to live and die by that bread and butter early on and resist the urge to try to change it up too early. I feel like they went away from the bread and butter too early in that second half, and that caused them to sputter out for the rest of that quarter. But the good news is that this team definitely has an identity. They were able to do what they did against Cincinnati, what they did in one drive against Baltimore, and now what they did in a lot of drives against Washington very successfully. These are teams that have decent defensive lines, minus Cincinnati. They were injured that week. But Baltimore, a really good defensive line. Washington, one of the better defensive lines in football. They were able to do their bread and butter against some of the best competition this league has to offer. That should give them the confidence to never stray away from it, to never try to get too cute, and just stick with what really works, especially early on. Later on, you might be able to execute it at a high level with the other stuff, but right now we know what they can execute at a high level at, and you have the talent to be able to do it. So I would like to see more of that for the Cleveland Browns. But that's my thoughts on this win. The Browns did take a huge step mentally as a franchise and as a locker room today. Man, how long have we said this team does not know how to win in Cleveland? Today, they look like a team that knew how to win. That's huge. That has not been done in quite a while in this city. So, yeah, that is a reason to be happy about what happened today, because this is not a team that fell into a win. This is a team that turned it on and took that game and won it. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.